Hi everyone, I'm Chaya.
And I'm Andrew.
And this is
Civil Talk.
We're super excited for our next guest, Ms. Suneeta Misra. Let's find out what Suneeta's story is about civil disobedience.
Besides my career, I've had numerous issues of, made when I was made to feel different, but I think that's just a part of being colored and being different in this society, There was a time when I remember that so clearly when there was a parking slot and there were two of us trying to get to that slot, and I thought I had reached there first, and I got in, and then the chap just screamed, pulled his window down and shouted at me and said, "Go back to your country." And I said, "Well, why don't you go back to your country?" And so he made an obscene gesture and drove away. So things like that, I've had at the grocery store, people say, things like, why don't you go back, or you don't know how to talk, or and things that made me feel. But I give it back just as good as I get it. So I'm not a very meek person. So in that sense, it hasn't been that I've been victimized. I hate playing the victim. So I just give it back. So that's I think it's a question of being colored in this country.
So Suneeta, that's a very interesting observation and story. I appreciate you sharing that with us. But I'm curious. I want to go back to the education part of things while you were teaching. Curious to know, did you have the same level of intensity when you were fighting back? Back then. I know that there were back then and there's now. But while you were younger, as you said, while you were teaching, did you have the same level of intensity fighting back with those students? Because I know myself as a student, when I was younger, I was a hard-headed kid. I was crazy. I was asking all types of crazy questions and making all types of crazy comments. So, and being disrespectful to teachers, my apologies. But, I just wanted to know, did you have the same level of intensity even back then as you do today?
I think I was worse then. I was much more aggressive when I was younger. I came to a small town, Columbus, Ohio, at a time when it wasn't. I mean, Ohio State is a huge university, and there was quite a bit of diversity. But they weren't used to Indian students as much at that time. And I would teach. I was a graduate student, and I was teaching classes, and the kids. And at that time, probably my accent was a little stronger and heavier. And so they would try to put me down just because I had an accent, but I was very aggressive, and I now I have mellowed, so I've become better, and but at that time I was a lot more aggressive, a lot more liberal, and I just fought back, and I would not take anything lying down. So, now I've become mellow. And as time went past, I realized the kids, like you were talking about students who give you a hard time. I started off substitute teaching. Oh, that's the whole worst situation to be in. And they they know you don't know their names. They know they can get you. So, it was always that playing tricks on the teacher and knowing you could get away with it. And the substitute had their hands tied because they really didn't know things like phone numbers and how to get you, and not being able to get any kind of help in the school system. So later on, when I became a regular teacher, it was a little better, but kids always gave me a harder time because I was different. But I would laugh it off, and I would say, okay, it's okay to speak English differently. People speak English differently all over the world. English is not something that the Americans invented. I would always say that. So that was my pet phrase, but. So I laughed at it, and I tried to not play the victim card. I've always done that, and I fought back in any situation. I've had, even in bad situations, I fought back. And even if I didn't get the job, I fought back. And I would, it's always like that. So
I love that you use humor as your mechanism to deal with all these kinds of things. Would this be something that you would use to tell children of this generation how to deal with some of the discrimination or injustices that they're facing? I mean, we've had a couple people that have used humor, but not always in a different generation to see that. I think I love the humor.
Yes, I mean, I would. When my kids were younger, a lot of times younger kids tend to forget that they are of a different color. My kids were in a majority, in a dominant culture, and they would forget that they were a different color. And I would always keep reminding them that you are not of the dominant culture. Be aware that people will make you feel differently. And so that even today, I keep reminding my son who's in the business world, and I tell him sometimes, you should be aware that you look different. You might think you look the same, but you are different. But, stand your ground. It's okay. You should be proud of your skin. I always tell them, I'm fine with who I am. You can laugh at me, but I don't feel any less for that. It's on you that you can accept somebody different. So I try to teach them, and I think they're okay with it, both my kids. But, sometimes kids here, Indian kids, forget that they're from a different, they're colored, and they're not from the majority culture when they're younger. And you have to remind them that, okay, now my kids are older, and they identify much more with the minority culture, but earlier they did not. So I always told them, be proud of who you are and be comfortable in your skin. So I never had an issue with that. And fight back. The issue is, it's not that you don't play the victim card. You have to fight back, even if it costs you at times. You just have to fight back. That's what I would always teach them. Even today, I'm retired now.
So what happened in your life, and how did you become this very confident person?
It's just a product of what we were born with. I mean, growing up in India, and I can tell you that we are a lot more privileged than a lot of immigrants coming from Latin America and other countries. We came from an educated class, and we never had any lack of confidence. We never felt less than, the kids in universities over here. So that was just a product of who I was. I came from a country where I was the dominant culture, and I was never made to feel less. So when I came here as an adult, that was never an issue for me. But unfortunately, a lot of kids who come to this country are not coming from a privileged background. And so that situation becomes different. But that's just the nature of immigrants coming from India, which I feel made us a little more privileged than people coming from other cultures, where they came sometimes from very violent backgrounds or very poor backgrounds. We came from a privileged class, so we didn't have any issues of such a lack of confidence. I mean, we came here and we chose to stay here, and a lot of us, many of us love being here, and we would not go back. But we were comfortable in who we were right from day one. We never had any issues of adapting and adjusting. And I can seamlessly go back and forth between India and America and adjust between the two cultures. And, I think it's a product of who we are sometimes.
In your new career, are you still fighting the same way through storytelling?
Oh, yes. I completely have to continue fighting. I have to keep explaining to people that, even if I speak differently, or maybe I speak in a long-winded way, it is okay, that there are different ways of storytelling. And much of our stories are rooted in, what we experienced. And it's okay to tell those kind of stories too. And the Americans should get used to those different kind of stories, and it's a global world out there. And, I am not willing to change. I think, the Americans need to become more outward thinking instead of inward thinking. So I think it all stems from the fact that I'm comfortable in my own skin. And if I lose some jobs, and if I don't get into, and I'm like Chaya is saying, I've just started into a new career. It's really, as a professional, and it's hard, but that's okay. I'm willing to take chances. And it's the journey which is more fun than the end result, because I know I'm not that young anymore, and I might not get anywhere, but it's the journey which is fun for me. So I'm doing it for the passion, for the love of it. Now, when I was starting off as a teacher, it was a do or die situation. I needed the job and I needed the money, and so it was different there. But I still did not take anything lying down. I fought back, and I lost jobs.
So this is a little different from other questions I'm going to ask you. It's a little bit of a two-part question, but I'm just curious. Who are some of your role models growing up? And the second part to the question would be, what of those people out there that can hear what you're saying right now and say, hey, you know what? I don't know if I really believe that. You know, there are a lot of non-believers out there, people who are doubting your story, people who would call you, oh, she's just a professional victim or whatever the case is. I'm just curious to know, what are your thoughts and what would you say to those people out there?
I think, it's not that I've not faced problems and I haven't been depressed, and even now I get terribly depressed, and sometimes I feel and as I get older I have health issues also. So it's not that I haven't had to struggle. It's just you keep trying to tell yourself it's okay. It's okay. I'm comfortable in who I am, and nobody can put me down. And you have to keep moving forward. But it's not that there isn't a struggle. I came to a university like Ohio State, where the majority of people were a different culture, and I was like a monkey in a box. I look so different, and they would find me strange, and a lot of times we were paired off with families as foreign students, international students. We were paired off with families in the city, and many of them were very conservative and very they had a very close kind of mindset, and they would be patronizing. But at that time I didn't take things lying down, and I fought back. So it's not that I didn't have a struggle, but what the young people coming from India, or coming from immigrants who are coming to this country, have to realize that they have to be comfortable in themselves, and then everything else becomes easier, even if you have to really, really fight to get somewhere. And then you have to be fair to everybody else. And sometimes we forget that young people who are coming now, sometimes from different cultures, different countries where violence is so bad, have it really hard. So you have to accept the fact that maybe we had privileges that many people don't. And I try to teach my children that, but I do not want them to ever think that our struggle was less. It's just that I think in my case, I just had a better mind. Like you said, it's all in your head, and you have to believe in what you are and not let anybody put you down. And role models, I had a lot of role models. We came from a rich culture. So growing up in India, we had strong female role models. And at that time, maybe because I came from a majority culture, and the women's rights movement was coming up, and we were fighting for things. And so some of the things that we picked up were stupid, just to assert our identity, but like smoking and drinking and all of that. So we never lacked for role models, and we did stupid things in trying to assert ourselves. And our children, I think a lot of times the girls now, my daughter or Chaya, they are much more well put together than when we were there growing up and fighting male dominated situations in universities. Even in India, it's very male dominated. Even though we had a female prime minister for the longest time, it's a very male dominated patriarchal culture. So you have to fight back. And we just never, because I was from a privileged background, I never took anything lying down, and I just fought back. And I gave it as good as I got. But that's all I can tell you. But it's not that there wasn't a struggle. It's always been a struggle. And I'm sure the struggle continues today. I mean, for young girls like Chaya in different parts of this country, oh God, I can't even believe how bad it must be in Hollywood. But, you have to keep fighting. You cannot just allow anybody to put you down. Now, after that, you have to, if you don't get what you want to, you have to keep adapting and adjusting.
So Suneeta, what are you working on? Because I know you are working on something. Tell us about it.
Well, I'm working on a story similar to what I grew up in. It's an adaptation of a Chekhov play called Three Sisters. And it's about a family of three girls who grew up in the 70s, in the background of where India was in a lot of turmoil. And we were going through something called the emergency, where the government was becoming more authoritarian and many of the democratic rights were being taken away. And then there was this one family where these women were trying to come of age. And this one woman who's a protagonist is trying to fight some of those barriers. And also within herself, she's fighting prejudices because, in India, it's a very status-ridden society. It's a very class-conscious caste conscious society. So she was fighting demons from within and outside. So it's like a metaphorical thing. It's a story of a woman's coming of age in an environment which is full of conflict. So it's her internal conflict in the background of conflict all around her as India was evolving from a colonial country to a post-colonial world. So that's the kind of stories I grew up with. That's the kind of stories I tell. So
thank you all for listening and staying tuned. Suneeta, was a great conversation. We're so excited for upcoming ones. And if you liked what you heard, then be sure to check out Ashwini in our previous episode and stay tuned for Bushra, who's upcoming. We've just got great content. We're so excited for you to hear their stories and how they deal with some of the things that we all deal with.
And if you like what you've been hearing the last 2 episodes, please like and subscribe to our channel. We would love to bring more interesting and beautiful content and conversations that we all need to have at the end of the day. So we appreciate you very much. Subscribe, like our videos, and start a conversation with someone.